And today I want to look at a remarkable map from the year 1507. Now, 1507 was 1 year after the death of Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, of course, who we know was an Italian, or at least by today's modern terminology would be considered Italian, but sailed under the flag of Spain, the Kingdom of Spain, which was the folks that paid his way across the Atlantic. Now, in 1506, Columbus died essentially in denial, still believing that he had discovered a route to what he would have referred to as the Indies or the West Indies, or Asia as we would know it today. But for the first time in 1507, just 1 year after the death of Christopher Columbus, this map appears. The original map, actually, which I've seen in person, is at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. But this one here is from 1507, and a word appears for the first time in recorded history. And I want to take a second to look at this map and just give you a chance to try and identify what we're looking at, where we're looking at, and if you can actually spot the word that appears for the first time in the year 1507, then you can just shoot me an email, and I will make sure that you get 5 extra credit points. So a little tricky there. I'm just trying to make sure that you're watching the videos. But there is 5 extra credit points if you can identify the word that appears for the first time on this map by the German geographer Martin Waldseemüller from the year 1507. So I'm just going to give you just a second to look at this. Okay, so again, this is world history 1500 to the present. But even before the advent of the year 1500, you can start to see the origins of the modern world and some of the forces of change which are going to shape the world from 1500 to roughly 1750, particularly, of course, the advent of European imperialism. European imperialism led at first by the nations of Spain and Portugal. I say nations, perhaps the word kingdom would be more appropriate in this historical period. But in the year 1494, at this town of Tordesillas in Spain, a treaty was signed between the two powers of Spain and Portugal, which essentially divided the world into two halves. And you can see that reference as well in the clip from the TV series Shogun, which I've also linked in Module 2. So today, of course, Spain and Portugal, if people know about Spain and Portugal at all, perhaps you're lucky enough to have been there on vacation, or maybe you follow European soccer and know that Spain and Portugal are leading soccer powers in the world today. But in the year 1494, Spain and Portugal were also the emerging European powers in terms of navigation and exploration of the Atlantic. So what we're looking at here is a line that was literally driven down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in 1493 and then subsequently revised, negotiated in fact by emissaries of the Pope in Rome, of course the head of the Roman Catholic Church in Europe at that time, or at least in Western Europe. The Pope was really seen as the only figure who had the authority outside of nations themselves to negotiate between monarchs. And so the Spanish and the Portuguese in the 1490s, this is, remember, just 2 years after Christopher Columbus's first voyage across the Atlantic. They're trying to divide the world in two, and to divide, if you like, the spoils of empire between themselves. And by that, I mean not just trade routes, but also territorial claims. And so the Spanish, this is a remarkable claim, but the Spanish are laying claim to everything that is essentially to the west of this imaginary line drawn down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the Treaty of Tordesillas division of the world. And the Portuguese, by contrast, because they had pioneered long-distance exploration along the west coast of Africa and would eventually emerge up into the Indian Ocean, and would actually make landfall in India in 1498, are laying claim to everything to the east of the Treaty of Tordesillas line. Now, the idea here behind this treaty is that these two powers are separating the world between themselves and also demarking it in such a way that they would not come to blows as they divided the spoils of what would emerge as the New World. But I don't think you need to be, a great, rocket scientist to figure out that there may be some problems with this division of the world. And again, if we can take a second here just to think about what some of the problems might be. Think about the knowledge of the world that existed in 1494. What did the Spanish and the Portuguese actually think that they were dividing when they draw this line through the Atlantic? Secondly, I want you to think about how the rest of the world would have seen this division of the world, laying, if you like, the foundations for the origins of the modern world, but how it might have created ill feeling, not just among Spain and Portugal's European neighbours, but also how the rest of the world would have felt about this in Africa or in the Americas itself, which was home to some of the great empires of world history. And then finally, think about the actual patterns of empire as they would evolve over the next 200 years. How does this actually reflect the real power of Spain and Portugal? Is this map really a realistic division of power between these two countries, these two kingdoms? So a lot to think about there. We'll come back to these themes on week 3, module 3 next week. But again, if you can look out for the word that appears on the map for the first time in world history and send me an email, I will make sure you get the 5 extra credit points. Until then, have a great week, everyone. And let me know if you have any questions. Thanks very much.